I got my policy 20 years ago.
See, I knew you were going to say that.
I have a kick-ass policy. I mean, you have to realize my parents, so blessing and curse, right? My parents died 30 years ago. I watched all this happen.
All right.
I am like, this shit is not going to happen to me. And this was even before I got into this business.
Welcome, everybody, today to So Your Parents Are Old. This is the place where we learn how to care for ourselves so we can care for others. I will say that one of the things that absolutely shocked me when I became a caregiver to my mom was the sheer volume of paperwork that I had to deal with. I mean, in the course of a day, there's, of course, the physical therapy bills that are coming through her Medicare. And I have to say, I am not a person who likes paperwork. I know some people do. I am not one of them. In fact, I absolutely hate it. But my guest here today, Pamela Wilson, actually helps people navigate all the legal and financial issues around taking care of your parents, not to mention the health issues, the family dynamics that come up in a caregiving situation. She is a care manager. She is the author of The Caregiving Trap. She has an amazingly helpful YouTube channel and blog, really one of the best out there, if not the best that I've seen, that just gives you the info that you need. You can wash your dishes and listen at the same time. She offers consultations, all sorts of services to families. So welcome, Pamela.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here to talk about all this fun stuff. It's interesting because your channels, you speak both to the children of aging parents and to the people who are aging, right? So you found a way to be big tent. How do you do that?
Well, it's because of my work experience. So when I was the care manager, right, when I was the power of attorney, when I was the guardian, I had to work with both sides, and you really try to bring everybody together. And it's important. So caregivers get stressed out, right, and they get impatient with their parents because mom and dad aren't doing this fast enough. But yet they don't realize what it's like to be mom or dad who has heart disease or cancer or something else. And like getting out of bed is like the event of the day. Yeah. So I try to talk about both sides to bring people together so that it's a little easier and people work together.
So let's talk again about my favorite thing, paperwork. Everybody has to do it when you start caring for your parents. We can talk about what you should be doing before you even feel like maybe you have to take power of attorney, right? I really regret not sitting down with my mom when she was starting to have trouble doing her bills because I could see she was getting frustrated in a way that I hadn't saw her get frustrated before. And my move was just like, okay, calm down, do that. Like, I'll play with your grandchild in this corner. You just let me know when you're done. But what should you be doing just to help? And also with the knowledge you may have to take this over.
You know, the story you told me made me think back. So my parents have both passed. And when my mom passed away, I went back and I was the money person, right? So I'm going through the checking account and all this kind of stuff. And I realized that she never knew how to balance a checkbook.
Oh, God. Okay.
The checkbook amount would get low and I would see a transfer in of money. And I thought, oh my gosh, I could have asked her, can I balance your checkbook every month? So part of the conversation is early on, mom or dad, eventually you're going to need this help. I'm going to need this help. Financial power of attorney, all of that. Are you guys managing this okay? Is there anything I can do to help? Now, sometimes parents are going to say no because they don't want kids to know like how much money they have and all of that. But especially with Alzheimer's or dementia, math skills go 10 to 15 years, sometimes 20 years before there's even a diagnosis. So if your parents have trouble with math, I used to do my parents' income taxes, but if there's any kind of issues with like math or calculations or bills or things like that, get involved as early as you can and say, well, mom or dad, why don't we just create a list of like all the bills you pay every month, the ones you pay occasionally every year, just in case something happens to you so that if I need to step in and pay these, at least I know where to look.
In my experience, I would say probably half of the people I know, who are in mid-age, their parents have shown them everything, right? I've shown them, oh, they've been death cleaning. Oh, they've showed me everything, blah, 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 blah. And the other half say, oh, my parent would never talk to me about that. I have no idea. Don't know how much they have. Don't know what their plan is, like, blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, if you saw these two sets of parents having dinner, you wouldn't know which set of parents was the one that is refusing to talk to their kids about it. I guarantee you.
Well, part of it is cultural too, though.
Okay.
So there's a lot of cultural issues in families where we don't talk about that. We don't share this information. This is how our parents did it, so this is how we do it. And then there's trust. Some parents, if let's say there's 6 kids and the kids don't get along, there's family secrets. So maybe mom or dad is telling one of the kids, but not the other 5 kids. Well, that puts the kid that knows in a really bad, uncomfortable situation because they have all this information and they can't say anything. And the other kids are like, well, we want the information. And mom or dad is saying, well, we've got it handled, right? Well, they have it handled with like sibling number 1, but not sibling, not the other ones. Part of it, though, is pride, too. Maybe the parents didn't save money. Maybe they didn't manage it well. Maybe they're embarrassed that their accounts are a mess or they have credit card debt that's, $20,000 or $30,000. So part of it can be trust, it can be culture, it can be embarrassment, and it can be, we don't think our kids should know about this. We have professionals managing this. So it really depends on the relationship. And if there's any disagreement between the kids, the parents, in my experience, will purposely not share the information because they don't want more disagreement.
So how about like medical billing? I have been blessed with not having to do a lot of that because my mom has memory loss, but she is healthy as a horse otherwise, right? My big move that I made, which has really paid off, is I got her a new doctor at a center for aging, right, at a hospital. So I'm in their portal. All her appointments, all her medications, all her referrals, if she has to ever be admitted, it's all going to go through the same place. And that has, I believe, saved me countless hours of confusion. And I was only able to do that because my mom's doctor retired. So she needed somebody different. And I spent some time researching like what would be the best and most kind of convenient way to do this. I do believe that if you're getting a new doctor for a parent in this day and age, and that doctor doesn't have a portal that you can do things through, you should really think twice about using that doctor and really look for somebody with a portal. But what about medical billing, doctors, all of that? How do people talk to their parents about like, okay, let me take over reading your bills so that I can appeal to the insurance. Let me come with you to the doctor's appointment so I can hear what's going on.
So the portals are amazing. Now, as you mentioned, not all doctors, and especially some specialists, don't have their own portals. So in a perfect world, if you have a primary care or a geriatrician in a huge health system, their electronic medical record is going to speak to other doctors. But if there's specialists outside of there, it's probably not going to communicate. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes in health tech in the United States, trying to get all these systems to talk to each other.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. But you're right. Having a portal where you can go, where the bills are there, where you can just push a button and pay the bills, so much easier. But when you're talking to your parents about health, it kind of goes along with the conversation of kind of like the planning part. So even before they have a lot of health problems, it's mom or dad, if something happened, what would you want? I want to make sure I know who your doctors are, what medications you're taking, all this other stuff. Can I help you with that? And, do you have a medical power of attorney? So in a perfect world, if the caregiver is the medical power of attorney, that makes things much easier because then you have access to information. But it's just opening up the conversation to say, what if this happens? I just want to make sure I can help you. And are you okay with me helping you? So you don't want to say, well, I have to go to these doctor appointments with you. It's like, Would you like me to go, or do you need help with that? Because a lot of times older people go to the doctor and they leave, and you're in and out in 15 minutes, right? So you're lucky if you get your question answered. You leave and you're not sure what the answer was. Maybe you have a prescription and you can't remember why you're taking it, so you don't get it filled. So there's a lot of follow-up that is important to happen that doesn't always happen because it's like so confusing for people who get older. And it's just because they slow down, right? They can't think as fast in a 15-minute appointment as somebody who's 20 years old.
Yeah.
They don't go with lists of questions. They don't write things down. It just gets harder. And so asking if you can help and gaining that trust to help, saying, look, I'm not going to take over. I just want to help and make sure that this is all going okay and that you're getting billed for the right thing. Or if you get a refusal, maybe I can help you get this approved if we call your insurance company. But you need written permission to be able to do that.
Right. That's my other question. So let's say you are one of 5 kids and you call Aetna and you say, hey, I'm disputing this bill on behalf of my mother.
Aetna's going to say, well, who are you? Yeah, Aetna's going to say, do you have a release? Are you the power of attorney? Is your mom there with you? Can we put her on the phone so she can say it's okay for you to talk to us?
Is that all they need, though? Just, hey, it's okay, you can talk to her?
Well, so if you were at your mom's house and you were calling from your mom's phone number that they have on file, and your mom is there and you're both on speaker.
I have done this. Yes.
They'll talk to both of you. Yeah, they'll talk to both of you.
Yeah.
But in a perfect world, let's say you have just medical power of attorney, you send it, you get it on file with Aetna, you get it on file with Medicare, you get it on file with all the doctors. Then you can just call and make the phone call. Or if you're the guardian, the same thing.
So tell me what that is. So medical power of attorney is a DNR, do not resuscitate,
No,
it's separate.
no.
What is, explain what it is.
Very good questions. So medical power and a financial power of attorney are legal documents. In a perfect world, you get them from an estate planning, a probate, or an elder law attorney because there's a lot of bells and whistles that go into those documents, and they follow state statutes. Sometimes people will just download a form from the internet, which it works, but if you end up in trouble or litigation, probably not the best thing, but it will work. So your parent has to appoint an agent, which is you, the child, and they give you all these permissions to talk to their physicians, to get access to medical records, to pay bills, all of that. You take this document, which is usually signed by your parent, accepted by you, saying, yes, I will do this, maybe witnessed by a couple of people, and notarized. Because when your parent does this, they can't have advanced dementia. They have to understand what they're signing. So then you just take this document, and in the document it says copies are as valid as the original. You email it to the insurance company, to the doctor's offices, to everybody in the world, so that when you call, you can say, hey, I'm the power of attorney. I sent this document on this date. Can you look it up to make sure you have it on file so that we can talk about X?
And where do you find that email of where you send it? Is that
You
just
keep everything. So usually you have to call, and it's like a records department or a billing department. So you have to call Aetna or Cigna or Medicare or whatever. Medicare has their own permission form, by the way.
Oh, of course they do.
So you call and you say, where do I send this? I have a power of attorney document that I need to put on file. And normally they'll give you an email address. I mean, people don't really fax anymore, but there's still faxes out there. Email address or a mailing address where you can mail it. Now, the important thing is the minute you send it, the next day or the day after, you have to call back and say, I sent this. Can you confirm that you got it? Because half the time it gets lost somewhere. They don't receive it. It can take like a couple of weeks for them to find anything, right? So you need to send it and then call and follow up, make sure they got it so then they can talk to you.
Okay. And then there is also a DNR, or if I'm in the hospital, this person has the ability to make decisions on my behalf. I know I have this.
Well, so there's a DNR and then there's a living will. That's different. Okay, so the medical power of attorney gives you permission to make decisions. But then there's a living will that specifies what those decisions are. That is a separate legal document. So a living will says, hey, I'm Pamela D. Wilson. I don't want my life prolonged. I don't want a feeding tube. I don't want to be intubated. Now, if there's a medical error, then you can fix things. But if I'm dead, you leave me dead. Or if two physicians say that I can't make decisions, then I can, my power of attorney becomes my guardian. So you specify all this stuff. But then, then there's this green form, which is called a MOST form, medical order for scope of treatment, that your doctor's office has. And this is the form that says, yes, I do want to be resuscitated or I do not. But then there's these other boxes on there that says, well, maybe I want some limited care, or I want comfort care, or I don't want a feeding tube, or I want antibiotics. In a perfect world, you have both of these. Now, the problem is with the green form, let's say that you go have surgery. And on that green form, you check the box that said, if I stop breathing and my heart stops, you let me go. Well, the doctors at the hospital are going to say, we're going to rescind that when you have surgery because, something crazy could happen. We could give you a medication that could stop your heart. So we're not going to follow your order. Okay. So then what you do in that case is if you're the person on the table and everybody's there and they're getting ready to give you the anesthesia, you say, okay, everybody here, I realize you rescinded my DNR, but I'm telling you now, if I'm out for more than a minute, I don't want you to bring me back because I'm not going to come back better than I am right now. And I'm telling you all of this so that you all hear this and you don't feel bad if you don't bring me back.
Oh my God. Who's gonna have the peace of mind though to actually say
me because I've seen what happens.
Right.
I've seen what happens.
That people are just, now you're in the ICU and you're never coming back, but nobody knows what to do.
And you've got brain damage.
6 days of chaos.
And you're going to be like millions of dollars of care to your family. They do it because it's a liability issue, right?
Right.
And they've probably been sued by families who are like, you killed my person on the emergency room thing. Well, right before you're going into surgery, there's like 5 or 6 people in that room. You need to talk to them so they all hear what you're saying.
Okay. That is definitely a pro tip. That is for sure a pro tip. I personally I keep on being like, I need a binder. I need an enormous binder. And in that binder, it's not like a 3-hole punch situation. It's like plastic wrap papers. And then I stick all these different forms, which can often be a good power of attorney is what, like 10 pages maybe or something like that, maybe shorter.
It can be 20. It depends on how much detail there is.
Okay, so but when you're really needing detail, so I stick them in all, and then it's one binder. It has everything, all the hard copies. As a visual person, I feel like I need that versus like hunting and pecking on my computer. Like I know I put it says, I have a folder that says important mom docs, but then like in there it's like 11731 because I didn't like name that folder. But how do you think it's best to store all of this? Are you going to tell me it all needs to go in a safe?
Well, so the originals are best in a safe or a safety deposit box because the originals say copies of this are as good as the original, right? And you never want to lose the original of a will because when somebody dies, they will only accept the original. If you have a copy, too bad, right? So put them somewhere safe.
Okay.
The other thing is you can organize them on a computer. I always recommend having stuff scanned just because if you've got to email a power of attorney, it's easier just to, email a PDF. There are programs, and I don't want to name names, but there are programs for family members to organize all of these documents. Some of them are more secure than others. Mm-hmm. You obviously want the most secure ones, but you can upload power of attorney documents. You can upload titles to cars, titles to homes, bills. If you're a computer person and you just like everything online and organized, there are platforms that you can do this.
You're talking about like iCloud, Dropbox.
No, I'm talking about specialized programs. If you Google like Vault for important parent documents or organization system for important parent documents, these sites will come up.
But they could go out of business. I mean, it could be 20 years down the line and you're like, where is that thing? Oh.
Right. Or you have your own server or you put them on a flash drive.
Right.
You've got to make sure that wherever you store this stuff, you're going to have access to it. That's the most important thing. A lot of people do put it in a file cabinet and they lock up a file cabinet. I have clients right now, one in particular, I'm a power of attorney for a friend. And she's like, if something ever happens to me, there's a key in this place in my house. Everything's in the file cabinet. You just go there.
Mhm.
Everything's there. I'm like, okay. And that's kind of what you need to do with your parents, right? You need to say, if something happens, where am I going to find all this stuff? I can't be like searching for things all over the place. Now, here's the thing, though. If you put it on file with the hospital and the doctors, you will, I have been power of attorney for someone who was fine. And 4th of July weekend, I get a call saying, hey, Mrs. Smith's in the hospital and you're her power of attorney because we have the document here. I'm like, okay. So, if you put this on file with the healthcare systems, normally everybody has access to it. So you're not having to carry it around again. You just have to do that the first time.
And so what about if you don't have family? What happens to these old people with no kids or nieces or nephews or people who are like looking out for them? Is that part of your business?
Professionals. It was part of my business. So from 2007 to 2018, that is exactly what I did. I took care of people who had families, but I also took care of what I call solo agers. So people who had no family or the family was their age and they're like, I'm 85. I can't take care of my 85-year-old sister, right? So I would do that. So there are professionals that you can find. Some states have more people like this than others. There's an association called the National Guardianship Association, of which I'm a member. It's a certifying group for people like this who serve as professionals. But otherwise, let's say that you don't want to appoint a professional because there's a cost associated, right? Maybe you have a friend or you have two friends and you're like, hey, we're all single. We need to take care of each other. Or maybe your sister had a child and you have a niece or a nephew. You ask them. You got to have these conversations, though, long before you need the help, because these people may or may not agree. And what used to happen is attorneys would do these documents and somebody would name a person, but they would never ask that person. So like when they got the call and they're like, well, hey, you're the power of attorney for Mary Jones. These people are like, what are you talking about? I didn't agree to this. I'm not going to do this. So what's happening today is attorneys now have learned that, again, elder law, estate planning, probate should know this, but you have a form called an acceptance of agreement, right? You name somebody as a power of attorney. This form goes to that person to say, hey, you're being appointed power of attorney. This is the document. Will you accept? Sign this piece of paper, have it notarized, and send it back saying you agree to do this.
Okay. Yeah.
Because people were not doing that. And then people were being named and they would get the call and they're like, I'm not doing this. So it would cause all kinds of problems.
Right. Yeah. What happens in that situation?
Well, hopefully you have named a second person. I always say you should have like a first person and a second person and sometimes a third person. So like if person A can't serve, then it goes to person B. If person B can't serve, it goes to person C. That way you don't have to continually redo your documents. If person number one says, I can't do it, you got to find somebody else.
So what is your experience with the kids of these kinds of parents? I'm sure it runs the gamut, but, in one of your podcasts, I heard you say, like, you want to have this because you don't want your kid making all these decisions and looking after their inheritance or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, because I come from the place of, oh, I'm just trying to do exactly the right thing for my mom, and that's what everybody says. But like generally, what are the different things you see?
Normally, so in a perfect world, all the kids are in agreement and they do what the parents want. What happens a lot of times is, and this happens when kids move away from home and there's usually one primary caregiver, right? So let's say that mom and dad live in a town, they need care, one child is there doing all this work. And all the other kids are out living their life, right? They're having fun, they're getting married, having grandkids, traveling. This caregiver is saying, hey, siblings, I need some help. Siblings are like, we don't have time, you handle it, you do it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then this child maybe becomes the power of attorney and they start doing things like, well, I'm going to sell mom's house and move them into an assisted living community so we have money to pay for stuff. And the other kids are like, well, what do you mean you're selling the house? That house is our inheritance. And this kid's like, well, where have you been for the last 20 years? You haven't done anything. So the kids who want their inheritance will hire an attorney, saying, hey, my brother or sister, they're like doing bad stuff. They're
Mm.
selling my parents' house. They're wanting to move mom and dad. You would be surprised the knockdown, drag out court battles. And they'll even say, well, hey, you know what? I bet they influenced mom and dad to make them power of attorney. I bet they forced them to do that. So we're going to even say the power of attorney is not valid. Which is why I tell parents, when you do this, you tell all of your children, you put everything in writing. So if there are disagreements, you deal with it right off the bat.
I mean, how often do you see wills being rewritten at the last minute? How
Contested,
often?
oh, it's
Yeah.
horrible. So I have seen nightmare situations where the child who's the main caregiver gets a parent with dementia who has no idea what they're signing
Mm.
to rewrite a will, taking the other 4 kids out of it. Which is why I say, if you have an estate plan, put in that estate plan that this estate plan cannot be revised unless somebody contacts this law firm. Any other things done outside of this law firm, not valid, can't be enforced. I mean, it's horrible that people have to go to this extent, but let me tell you, kids, I've even had attorneys write themselves into somebody's will, or a
Oh my God.
caregiver from an agency write themselves into somebody's will, or do these types of things. So it's important, and this is the benefit of having a law firm do this, right? Even if the law firm changes hands, you go back to the law firm that wrote this original document. But the problem is your parents have to tell somebody the document exists, right? So let's say there was an estate plan and your parents didn't tell anybody. And then now there's this new power of attorney document and will. It's going to be pretty hard to contest that if nobody knew there was one that got changed.
And law firms, when they change hands, they tend to move their files,
They will
right?
tend to move their clients. And so the attorney who's leaving should say, I sold my business to this person. Would you like your files back? Would you like your files to go there? You should specify that.
So that usually happens, basically. You're saying you wouldn't be worried about that.
It usually happens. And you should, honestly, you should just keep in touch with your law firm once a year to say, hey, you guys are still there, right?
Yeah.
Or your power of attorney should do that to say, well, hey, if anything comes up, you're still practicing, right? I don't need to call somebody else.
Right. So let me ask you a question. Let's say the parent has Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or some dreadful disease for years and years, and there is that sibling that takes care. Isn't it fair for that person to ask for additional money from the estate or to pay themselves a salary? I mean, as well as I know that people outlay their own money a lot of the time, buy the groceries, whatever. This credit card doesn't work fine. What do you do in a situation like that? I'm sort of surprised when I talk to people with a lot of siblings that there isn't okay, you know what? Let's all chip in and give Anne $1,500 a week for doing all this, because it is a job.
Oh, it is a job. And this is one of my favorite discussions.
Okay,
Caregiving
good.
agreements and contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Transparency. If you're the kid who, and I usually don't recommend this, but living with a parent and moving in with a parent, because it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And it always doesn't turn out the way you expect. But if you're the primary caregiver, then you have an agreement with your parent. If you're the kid and you're doing stuff and your parents are going to compensate you maybe for 10 hours a week, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's 10 hours a week. This is what I'm going to do. You keep timesheets just like you're an employee. You decide if they're paying you like an independent contractor and you're going to pay taxes, or they pay you like an employee and you go through a payroll company, right? You do all this above board. If your parents are leaving you the house, you put this in the agreement. You document it, you share it with all the kids and say, look, this is what's going on. Just so you know, I don't want any contests when I'm dead because this is the agreement. And if any of you contest this and there is money left, you're out of the will. I mean, you have to be so explicit. It sounds like a business arrangement, but it's the only way. I mean, what good is being a spouse with a husband on Medicaid if you have a house that's paid for, but you can't pay the taxes and you can't pay the insurance and you can't buy your groceries and you can't, the electric bills going up. You can't pay the bills. What good is that?
So Let's talk about Medicare and Medicaid, because obviously most children are shocked when they learn that Medicare does not pay for things that are not considered medical, like long-term care.
Well, the problem is we're not solving the problem. Okay, the problem is healthcare and the government treat sick people. We need to teach people to be healthy, and we need to teach people to be healthy the day they're born. So if we, the government, would invest more money in preventative care and preventative education, we wouldn't have all these sick people at age 65.
Right.
We wouldn't have all these expenses. It's impossible for the government to fund all of this. It really is. And so when you think of long-term care and Medicaid, states now are trying to come up with solutions. The state of Washington has already come up with a program called Washington Cares.
Yeah, tell us about, I think that is amazing. I just read about it online. I was shocked.
So states now, because they realize they have a Medicaid problem, right? They have all these people in nursing homes or people that need care, and there's not enough money. There just is not enough money to go around, right?
Mhm.
There isn't, because the aging population, the numbers are so extreme. So the state of Washington said, you know what, we're going to have a tax, and it's going to be a payroll tax, just like Medicare and Social Security. And we're going to tax people, and we're going to set this money aside for long-term care when they're older. And so it's kind of the closest thing to state-run long-term care insurance, which means that when you're 65, there'll be a pool of money. I think according to the state of Washington, it's around $30,000 or $35,000 that you could spend for in-home care or nursing home care or things like that. Now, honestly, that does not go very far. California is looking at it. New York is looking at it. Colorado is looking at it. Oregon, a bunch of other states are looking at it, because there has to be a way to fund this, because it's unaffordable. But if we would address the issue of health and preventative health and not just treat sick people, we wouldn't have this problem.
But I guess from where I'm sitting with a mom on Medicare, and she does have the original Medicare and not Medicare Advantage,
Which is better.
Her care costs are still astronomical, but she went to the hospital and it was a $110,000 bill and it was all covered, right? So I can see there's good and bad things about Medicare.
Well, I was talking to somebody about this a little bit ago. It's like, it's mind-boggling. So, somebody was like, well, what do these low-income people do? And I said, there's all kinds of services out there. I said, the problem is most older people who live by themselves can't figure out where the services are, how to get it. There's all this paperwork you got to fill out. It can take months. If you don't have help, it's a disaster, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, applying for Medicaid is mind-boggling. And then you have this 5-year look-back period to make sure you didn't give any money away, which is why I talk about caregiver agreements and contracts that are notarized, that fit within Medicaid guidelines and all of that stuff. So I'll talk about my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law 3 years ago fell, and she was living in independent living. And I talked to my husband. I'm like, well, how much money does she have left? And he's like, well, she has this much. I'm like, oh, we need to get her into an assisted living that takes Medicaid, because we got to do a spend down. I said, otherwise she's going to run out of money, and we're going to be struggling to get her in anywhere. It's a plan. You have to plan for it.
Is that every nursing home would do that?
Now, this is an assisted living community. Not every assisted living community does this, okay? Which is why if you're in an assisted living community, you have to need a nursing home level of care to qualify for this. There are wait lists to get into these assisted living communities, which is why you can't wait till the last minute if you don't need a nursing home, okay? Now, nursing homes accept Medicaid, but they also only have so many Medicaid beds. So maybe they have 120 beds and 20 are Medicaid, and those beds are occupied. You have to wait for somebody to die before you can get the bed. And some
Right.
Medicaid programs are like that. So some Medicaid programs for home and community-based services and stuff like that, you have to wait for somebody to come off for you to get on.
They still have to wait for somebody to die so they can move to a different bed? Do they physically? I've also heard there's one wing that's nice for the people who are private paying, and then there's one wing for Medicaid patients, which isn't as nice.
So in a perfect world, if you go into a
Do we
nursing
live
home
in a perfect world?
well, when you're planning, right, you've got to think about planning. You cannot just, if you do this at the last minute, it's probably not going to work out the way you want.
Right. Okay.
And you're going to end up in a bad place.
Yeah.
So in a perfect world, you know that you need nursing care, right? You pick a nursing home and you say, look, I have this much money. I want to spend it, and I want to stay here, and I want to go on Medicaid. Is that going to be possible? Do you accept Medicaid? Do you have a long-term care wing? And you're right, there are wings that are long-term care, that people live there permanently, because all the other people are like in and out. They're in and out. They're in rehab. They're there for therapy. They're in and out in 3 weeks. These other people live there permanently. So it's kind of like their home, right? So you don't have all this other disruption. So you say, okay, nursing home, I have $200,000. I want to work it out, and I want an agreement with you that when I run out of money, I can stay here. And so what the nursing home will do is they'll be like, okay, you've got $30,000 left. We need to start getting your paperwork arranged. We need your birth certificate, your medical power of attorney, your financial power of attorney. We need your bank statements for the past 5 years. We need all this stuff so we can get this paperwork ready to go.
Okay.
And then they help you file it. The billing office helps you file it because you've told them before, I'm going to spend all my money here and I want to stay.
And how much do they get from Medicaid per bed?
They lose money.
Oh, they
They lose money, which is why it's an unsustainable system. So let's say that, and I'm just going to pick a rate, but let's say that the cost to keep somebody is $200 a day. The nursing home is probably getting $180. So they're losing $20 a day. So they need all of the private pay people on the other end who are going in and out for rehab that they actually make money on to subsidize the people that they lose money on.
Right. I see. Is that why rehab has become so popular?
It's not why rehab has become so popular, but it's why nursing homes will do both rehab and long-term care. Now, some nursing homes are only rehab. They're like, we don't want to get into the Medicaid stuff. It's too much paperwork. It's a lot to deal with. We don't want to, risk going broke, right? Mm-hmm. There are some nursing homes that manage these very well. There are also these groups that go in and buy nursing homes. So they're investors. Those may not run the nursing homes so well.
Yes, I have heard. So I have heard.
Because they have other interests. And they may not run assisted living communities so well because they have financial interests, not we're going to do right by the people here.
So the last thing I wanted to talk about, and this is partially about you, but of course it's always about me and what I should be doing, is long-term care and whether you have a policy, how you're putting your affairs in order, and is it worth it for people in their 40s and 50s when you hear, oh, they don't write good policies anymore, don't even try to get long-term care, should we be looking into it anyway?
I got my policy 20 years ago.
See, I knew you were going to say that.
Kick-ass policy.
You are the most prepared woman for your death is going to go off without a hitch.
I mean, you have to realize my parents. So blessing and curse, right? My parents died 30 years ago. I watched all this happen.
All right.
I am like, this shit is not going to happen to me. And this was even before I got into this business. So yeah, I have a kick-ass policy.
Yeah.
If you can get a policy, I mean, if you're 20 years old, it's going to be so inexpensive because the risks are the older you get and you have health problems, they're going to rate you. They're going to ratchet up your premium because, oh, you have high blood pressure, you have this, or sometimes you may have diabetes and they're like, we're not going to qualify you. So the younger you are when you buy your policy, the less expensive it's going to be because you have all these years to pay for it, right?
You can't get a long-term policy if you have diabetes?
They will rate you. If you're insulin dependent,
right.
they'll increase your rates by 20, 30, 40%. Well, then you can't afford it, right? So why bother? And if you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia, forget it. You're not getting a policy because it's too late. So, I mean, it's not that a 60-year-old can't get a policy, but if you have health problems and they're actually going to come and do a physical, right?
Okay.
You could be paying $5,000 or $6,000 a month. For a policy. Now, that's because the time limit between when you buy it and you're using it is shorter. And they need to get the money out of it, right? And then half the time people have policies and they don't even use them. They're like, well, I want to wait to use that. I'm like, no, use it before you use your money.
Jeez Louise. Okay, well, Pamela, thank you so much for coming on my show. And I want to understand if somebody wants to talk to you, have a consultation, do you work in all states? How does this all happen?
So I work across the whole United States. I even talk to people who live in other countries that have parents living here, so expats. On my website, you go to PamelaDWilson.com, you click on services, there's an elder care consultation tab. It lists everything that I do. You can fill out a form and contact me. If you're looking for an expert witness for a court case, if you're a law firm or an individual who needs an expert witness,
So you're a one-stop shop for all things dreadful. Anything dreadful?
Unfortunately, yes. But we try to be positive, because if you're proactive and you plan, then there's no need for dreadful.
Right. You're sort of like a Glinda the Good Witch who turns the dreadful into fairy dust. Yeah. All right. So everybody, this has been So Your Parents Are Old. I'm Vanessa Grigoriadis, and thank you so much to Pamela Wilson. We will have a link to her website where you can check out her services, all her podcasts, her blogs, etc. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to So Your Parents Are Old from Campside Media. If you like the show, please tell your siblings and your friends who are going through this too. And please hit the subscribe or the follow button in your podcast app. In Apple Podcasts, that's up at the top right of the podcast player.